Kansas City is pretty much split right down the middle, putting you in two different states. There's a Missouri side and a Kansas side. We get it all the time from people that are relocating to Kansas City. Which one's better? Which one should we move to? And why is that? So in this video, we are going to try to explain the differences between Kansas and Missouri and find out which side might be best for you and your family.
All right, it's Max and Zach here, and today we're breaking down the pros and the cons of both the Kansas and Missouri side and which side you might want to live on when choosing to move to Kansas City. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. We've made hundreds of videos like this one, breaking down all the different areas and options we have in Kansas City. Subscribe to the channel, give us a like. All right, let's move on to the video.
Let's do it. All right, so let's start with some history on Kansas City, where it all started, how it all came to be. So originally, what came first was the state of Missouri, and then came the state of Kansas City. So Kansas City, Missouri was actually there first. It's actually named after an Indian tribe called the Kansa, and that's where the name and all that came from. But later, about 10 years later, the state of Kansas became a thing. And then about 10 years after that is when Kansas City, Kansas became a thing. So if you want to go with the original, the OG, that would be the Kansas City, Missouri side. This all happened a long time ago, back when the settlers were coming out west using the Oregon Trail, the Santa Fe Trail, later the California Trail, all coming up the Missouri River, and got off right there on pretty much by the state line. There's a little place called Westport downtown you can still visit, and that's where the settlers would get off because the river quit going west so much and started going straight north at that point. So that was when you got off, got your provisions, and started heading out west.
The river flows up north?
Yeah, it works its way north.
Oh, I thought it
goes
south.
It flows south, but the direction of the river.
Oh, okay.
Because they went up in the river. Which always boggles my mind. But from what I've learned in the history books is the river used to be much wider, like it almost stood still like a lake at a lot of times. But since, we've done things to make it narrow, move faster, deeper channels so we can get
that makes sense.
Barges up it.
Yeah, because it's moving quick nowadays.
Now you wouldn't want to paddle up that thing now.
That would be a nightmare. All right, well, thanks for the history lesson.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, so breaking down some of the differences between Kansas and Missouri, let's start with population. So the population of Missouri is quite a bit larger. It's coming in at 500,000 people in Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas is just 150,000 people. So almost 5 times as big on the Missouri side. I'm not good at math.
Almost 3 times as big.
Yeah. Well, it is 3 times as big.
Yeah.
150 times 3, 450. It's a lot bigger on the Missouri side, not only in geography, but in population. That's just the Kansas City portion. There are suburbs around Kansas City that we talk about all the time in our videos. On the Missouri side, you have Liberty and Parkville and Blue Springs and Lee Summit. Those aren't actually Kansas City reflected in those population numbers. And then on the Kansas side, you've got suburbs like Overland Park and Leawood and places like that we talk about all the time, and those aren't included. So the Kansas City metro as a whole is quite a bit bigger than the 150,000 people we're mentioning. Geographically speaking, the Missouri River plays a big role in the Kansas and Missouri side as you're up north. Everything west of the river is Kansas, and east of the river is Missouri, until you get right in the heart of the city, and then the river heads over to St. Louis. We live in the Northland. The people in Kansas City refer to everything north of the river as the Northland. That's all in the Missouri side. Once you're south of the river, Kansas City's split, not by the river any longer, but by a road. And it's called State Line Road, which is really interesting. So
yeah, go figure. In fact, there's kind of some cool stories about that, is because there's always different laws that states have. So there was a time in history not too long ago where the 18-year-old kids would dart across the street, hang out for a while, and then stumble back to the Missouri side late at night because the drinking age was 18 over in Kansas. So that happened for a while. And then there was another time where only 3.2 beer was sold in Kansas. So now Kansas is coming over to Missouri to buy their beer and then stumble back to Kansas. And now we're at a time where you have to go over to Kansas to gamble or to make sports bets, and then you can come back to, even with your phone, and then you come back to on the Missouri side. And then there's cannabis and all kinds of other things. So it's kind of funny. We are a city that has that state line, so we do have to jump across it for certain things, but it's been interesting through history. That state line used to be serve a really good purpose. That road right there is because stockyards or cattle trading was a huge business back in the day, and it was nice because when you had all the cattle, they had a stockyard right on the state line. You wouldn't have to worry about doing business in both states. It could just all happen right there on the line. In fact, sometimes cows were standing in both states at the same time. But then as time grew on, they needed a road down there. They put a road through it. Now that road's almost 14 miles long. You know, it's pretty much business as normal around here now. I mean, the one thing in Kansas City that we could all agree on is barbecue. And no matter what side of the state line you're on, that part is amazing.
Yeah, there still is some rivalry, not only with, sports and that sort of thing, but businesses. So the states they want that business and tax revenue in their state. So they'll offer incentives to Kansas businesses to move to the Missouri side and vice versa. So there is still a dynamic that goes on beyond, where you get your beer and
That's true.
where you
Those
place
are just
your
the
bets.
fun stories.
Let's talk about where you should live. That's the most important thing to you and why you've probably stumbled across this video. Whether you're on the Kansas side or the Missouri side, you've got different counties in every side. Whether it's actually in Kansas City, I think you probably want to be on the Missouri side if you have a Kansas City address.
Yes, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, the Kansas City, Kansas area is kind of small and in a median price point in the, probably like 150 to 200.
Yeah. It almost feels to me like it's like highway overflow. A lot of the highways just kind of go over to Kansas and like they incorporated that and then have built houses in the, but what's kind of nice is it's close to a lot of amenities south of town. So I would imagine that it's going to see some growth because the housing is cheaper there. And you are close to stuff. It's just kind of feels like it's on the rough side right now.
Yeah, a little rougher side of town on the Kansas City, Kansas side. There are some advantages because they do not pay the 1% earnings tax in Kansas City, Kansas. Whereas Kansas City Missourians all have to pay the 1% earnings tax if you work or live in Kansas City, Missouri. But it's also much nicer. It's the median price point in Kansas City, Missouri is probably in the mid 300s. It's big and nice. Yeah. It's kind of suburbia.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest county in Kansas City is on the Missouri side. It's Jackson County. And I can tell you that the average price point in Jackson County is $285. That's, you're in the Kansas City. And I mean, there's a lot of great places inside Jackson County, but something that's happened recently is property taxes have almost doubled. It's been in the news. It's been a big what? It's been a big pain in the ass for Jackson County.
Yeah, people
a big deal.
People are upset about it. They raised the tax rates across the board for their real estate taxes. So if they go from $2,500 a year to $5,000 a year, a lot of people can't afford an extra $200, $300, $400 a month on their house payment. So we've got a lot of calls from people that live in Jackson County on why did my house payment go up? What's going on? It's not the interest or the principal portion of their payment. It's the taxes and insurance portion. That's just going through the roof.
Yeah. So there have been some changes. They're trying to amend some stuff, but all in all, it's still the tax thing has been a big shock here lately in Kansas City. And I don't know, they're still digging through it. Some people have been able to get their taxes reduced. So it's just something you need to know if you're looking at Jackson County. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're going on the Kansas side, Kansas City, Kansas is pretty small. But if you're getting outside of Kansas City, there's some great suburbs like Overland Park, which has a little more sought after. It's more expensive, obviously. I think we're $4.99 is our average price point down there, but has great schools, very sought after, very competitive to get into that. So there is some great options on the Kansas side. You might just not call yourself Kansas City, Kansas.
Kansas City, Kansas is just a little pocket. Everything around it, you've got Lenexa, you've got Shawnee, Olathe, Leawood, Overland Park. There's a whole area around it that is pretty much, you feel you're in Kansas City, the metro area, but you just don't have a Kansas City address. So Kansas City on the south side of town, if it doesn't have a Kansas City address, it's probably in a pretty nice area.
Yeah, so really, I would say don't get too hung up. It's always good to talk with us to kind of see what your goals are about what you want to land in, but don't get too hung up on, I got to live in Kansas or I got to live in Missouri. There's great places for both. You just kind of need to know how to navigate that and what that really means. So that's why we're here.
All right, so how about types of homes? Kansas side versus Missouri side.
All right, let's go left to right. So let's start with Kansas. So in Kansas, when you're in Kansas City, Kansas, kind of close to the downtown area, you're going to see some of those old bungalows. These are the older homes of Kansas City, Kansas. So the bungalows, the little front porches, maybe some ranch homes. Then that's going to be pretty basic. And then as you start to sprawl out from that a little bit and head south into some of the newer suburbs, you're going to start to find your split levels. when they started building those for a little more square footage, a little more bang for the buck. And then as you sprawl a little more than that, you're going to come into ranches again, and then 2 stories, stories and a half, and then more suburban developments as you continue further south away from the city.
Yeah, so you're kind of talking about like the 1920s for the bungalows, the split levels in the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
And then the 2 stories, story and a half, maybe in the 80s, 90s, and
to today.
Up to today.
So that's how, the further you get away from the city, the more modern it gets.
Well, how about the Missouri side? How does it
So on the Missouri side, most of downtown Kansas City lies on the Missouri side, and I think they originally did that for tax purposes, and plus it was Kansas City, Missouri was there first, so that's where everybody wanted to be. So all the high-rises, all the skyscrapers are down there, and then amongst those are the condo living, and then as you get back from that, you've got like the River Market area, which is more condos and high-rise apartments. So that's kind of the downtown scene, and then as you spill north into North Kansas City, there's another Kansas City for you.
As if it wasn't confusing.
There wasn't enough. North Kansas City is its own little annex city on the Kansas City, Missouri side. It's actually at the south side of Kansas City, Missouri, but it's north of the river, so go figure.
My head's spinning.
But anyway, that is, that's when we start to get into the single-family homes. And then as you continue to go north, you get into some of the more recently developed neighborhoods with the splits and the 2-story, story and a half. As you continue north, like into Liberty in the north side of Platte County or Parkville. So
it's more the age of the home rather than the location, Kansas versus Missouri side.
Yeah, I think if you think about it like that, just the further you get away from the city, the more modern it's going to get. With exception of, I guess, the east side of downtown Kansas City, Missouri does have a lot of single-family bungalows. Still pretty close to the city and south of the river.
Yeah, the Brookside, Waldo area, a lot of those were built in the 20s.
But basically, as you expand away from there, it just gets newer and grows, and probably exactly what you'd expect and see in pretty much any city.
Hey, we hope you're enjoying this video. And if you're watching this video, you're probably doing some research, and we can appreciate that. That's why we're here. We love helping you and providing information. If you want additional information specific to you and your situation, shoot us a text. We'd love to hear from you. So that being said, let's move on to the video and go to the next step, huh?
Dive in. All right. Hey, so let's get into the vibe. What's it like being on the Kansas City, Missouri side? Let's start with that. Let's go right to left this time.
Yeah, the Kansas City, Missouri side has a lot to do. I mean, it has a really chill vibe. I think depends on how close or if you're in the downtown scene, or if you're out in the suburbs, or if you're out on a lake property or something like that. It's pretty diverse, but overall pretty chill. We've got lots of things to do. We've got the Royals and the Chiefs are on the Missouri side. The downtown area has the Power and Light District, which has a big T-Mobile arena with lots of sports and concerts.
And that's all surrounded by bars and restaurants and lots of outdoor stuff. Then there's the Crossroads, which is just down the street from that.
Yeah, which is a huge art scene. That's the Arts District.
And then there's the streetcar that kind of takes you through all the fun stuff downtown on the Kansas City, Missouri side that's completely free, so that's kind of cool.
Westport is kind of a bar and music scene.
Westport.
Plaza.
The Plaza, which is the premier shopping and dining. And then Union Station, which is also has museums. There's a museum down by the Plaza too, Nelson Atkins. But pretty much all the fun stuff we do in Kansas City happens on the Missouri side.
Yeah, the parades when we win a Super Bowl or World Series, happens, or even St. Patty's Day parades. Yeah. All of that happens on the Missouri side. There's also some lakes that are awesome, like the Land of the Lakes, Lee Summit, that we mentioned in a lot of our videos, is on the Missouri side. Up in the Northland, there's several lake communities, Lake Wacomas, Weatherby Lake. So yeah, I think the Missouri side has a great
lot to offer, absolutely. And then even just on the Kansas City side, we're not really known, like the Kansas City, Missouri proper is not really known for its schools downtown, but there's a lot of charter schools and private school options that are fairly elite. So it does have a very I'd say, a diverse variety.
Yep, heck yeah.
Missouri side.
Good vibes.
Good vibes. All right, so let's talk about some vibes for Kansas City, Kansas, or KCK, as they say.
If you're talking about just Kansas City, Kansas, that little pocket in there,
Definitely cheaper housing. So if you're looking for the most house for your buck, that's not a bad place to look.
lower taxes.
Lower taxes, and then I would also say it's fairly close to a lot of the cool amenities that Kansas offers outside of Kansas City. So some of the, like Johnson County, some of the bigger counties that have a lot of cool things that draw a lot of people to the Kansas side, you're really close to it. I mean, you share a border with it.
That is true. In Kansas City, Kansas, you can head west just a little bit and hit the Legends over in Wyandotte County, which has the Speedway, Kansas Speedway racetrack.
Soccer teams over there.
Yeah, the Sporting Kansas City soccer team has their stadium over there. It's a huge shopping center with lots of going on out there.
Nebraska Furniture Mart.
My wife was just there yesterday.
Great Wolf. What do you got in your house?
New bed set for the kid.
All right, nice. Yeah, so there is a lot of fun stuff to do on the Kansas side out there in Kansas City, Kansas. They do have a lot of room for growth. So some of the newer, as they're sprawling out into there and building some newer subdivisions, I think it's just going to continue to get better out there. So some opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. So remember, on the Kansas side, are you talking about the little pocket of Kansas City, Kansas, or are you talking about the whole
metro,
the whole metro area? Because that's, when you're talking vibe, there's definitely a different vibe between the two. So know what you're talking about when you're talking about the Kansas side.
That's right. So as soon as you spill outside of the Kansas City, Kansas vibe just into the next county, it's amazing. Super sought after, great school districts. That's your Overland Parks. We do a lot of videos about that. It's one of the most sought after suburbs of Kansas City. So with lots of good things that Kansas City, Kansas is close to.
Yeah, I will say a couple of my favorite restaurants are in the Kansas City, Kansas little pocket. El Pollo Rey is a place where you can go and get wood-fired chickens and make your own street tacos.
Yeah.
And then Slaps Barbecue is the bomb. They have the best burn-ins, in my opinion, of any barbecue place. So check those out if you're in that KCK area.
All right. How about some employment in schools? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I would say the employment varies quite a bit from the Kansas to Missouri side. I say in general, Kansas is more of industrial and manufacturing. You got the GM plant down in the Fairfax area. And then Missouri side is more tech and healthcare oriented. Just a generalization. You also have the Ford plant on the Missouri side too. So depends on where you're at exactly in the city.
Yeah. But as far as Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City's entire downtown lies on the Missouri side. So all the skyscrapers, all the businesses, everything are down there. So all those like financial, AT&T has a building down there. A lot of the city's tech stuff lies on the Missouri side.
Schools also vary quite a bit. So something to definitely make sure you're aware of is on the Kansas City, Missouri side, the south of the river, Kansas City, Missouri, that is actually the name of the school district. The Kansas City School District is a no bueno. They lost their accreditation a while back ago for about a 10-year span because their test scores were so terrible, and they've since regained their state accreditation, so give them some credit for that. But not known for being the best school district, so there are tons of charter schools there. But, if you get out in the burbs, the Lee Summits and the Blue Springs and Liberty and Park Hill, there are fantastic schools in the suburbs that are on the Kansas City, Missouri side.
And the same thing with Kansas City, Kansas. You do have options on that side, but really what you're looking for if you want those great school districts is to get outside of Kansas City, Kansas, get into the burbs and take advantage of some of the best school districts for the whole state of Kansas.
Yeah, the Blue Valley School District is a huge school district in Kansas, along with Olathe and Shawnee Mission. Those are some of the best schools that the city has to offer. So both states have great school districts. It just depends on where exactly you are. It kind of goes along with the age of the homes too. So as you start in the center, it's not the greatest, older, and then as you move out into the more modern areas, you get better school districts and higher taxes and all that kind of stuff. So just depends on what's important to you.
Yep. Hey, so overall, deciding which side to live on, the Kansas City, Kansas or Kansas City, Missouri, it really comes down to you. Both are great for all their different reasons, and it's just what reasons are right for you and your family. So hopefully you enjoyed this video and give us a like.
Yeah, if you're planning to make a move, we would love to hear from you. We'd love to help you plan and make your move, whether it's, 6 months from now or 6 days from now. It's never too early to give us a call. And if you've enjoyed this video, then you will really enjoy this other video we made about the 10 best places in Kansas City.
Awesome. We'll see you over there.